Yeah, you should be good to go.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'll call this meeting to order. Tonight is the North Wasco County School District 21 District Professional Learning Team Work Session. It's Wednesday, January 12th, 2022. And at this time, I'll ask everyone to unmute, and then we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So,
Robbie has a flag.
All right. So I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Next will be the reading of the district mission and vision statement, and I'll do that tonight, starting with our mission statement. And graduating all students to be college and career ready, challenging, inspiring, and empowering them to be healthy and productive citizens. Our vision statement: North Wasco is a premier school district. We provide students a rigorous and relevant education with schools performing academically in the top 5% of the nation. Our students are inspired by a talented, innovative, and highly effective staff that values continuous professional growth. Our district graduates citizens who are ethical and motivated to achieve their limitless potential. North Wasco is fully embraced by the community, reflecting its health and well-being. And the bulk of tonight is our district data review, so I will turn that over to Dr. Bernal.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be all back together again. Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone had an enjoyable winter break and holiday season with their loved ones. Thank you, everyone, for your patience last week as we got through a fun wintry wonderland. That was fun for me, experiencing Mother Nature and all its glory here in the gorge, and having fun with snow days here and its impact on the school and our operations, but we got through it nonetheless. So tonight our focus is on presenting kind of an update on where we are with our data, and we decided tonight, for the purposes of our presentation on data, to focus more on our localized data and really an emphasis on trimester 1. We have been back for full-time in-person learning for the first time after 1.5 years of being away for remote learning for a long time. And so working with my leadership team and working with our school site principals, we're focusing in on our trimester 1 data and really honing in and taking a look at our localized data and looking at our reading achievement, our math achievement, looking at our attendance data, our social emotional learning data, and also a plan of action moving forward. So each principal will talk about that data and what that looks like at their schools. I've asked them to keep their discussion, we'll pull up a Google presentation, and they'll each have some slides that they'll be talking from. We gave you some white paper reports with that same data on it. And I've asked each of them to keep their talking points and whatnot to 15 minutes or less, so everyone has some equal talking time. And then Amy will talk about special education and what we're looking like in terms of special education as a whole, and also localized at each of our school sites. Nick will give an update on our virtual academy, and then we'll finish up. Scott will talk and give a brief update on some things going on in Ed Services as it relates to our English language arts adoption process, because we are in the process of adopting a new English language arts adoption, and also our after school academy. We do have that up and going now at Chenoweth Elementary School. It just started this week. And we are still in the process of getting it up and going at Colonel Wright and Dry Hollow. So with that, I will turn the time over to our principal team. And I believe we are starting, if I'm not wrong, I believe we're starting with Chenoweth. I think they're
Yep. Yeah, I think I'm first.
Okay.
I'm AJ Rendell, first year principal at Chenoweth Elementary. So we're gonna go through reading math data. I realized after like looking through it that should have kind of like highlighted a couple of trends. So I'll just point that out during the presentation because we grabbed some historic data just to kind of look at growth over time. And we're looking at STAR data again, which is it gives us a metric of what the student might do on the state assessment. So next slide, please. So the reading achievement data, so the STAR assessment is a test that a student takes individually in class. This was something we did last year as well. And we at Chenoweth, I didn't this year, and I don't believe did last year. Second grade students did not take the STAR assessment last year. So if you look to spring 2021 at the 23%, that's this year's fourth graders. So early fall 21, 22. So there was some growth when they took that assessment in the fall. And then between early fall and late fall, so they took this kind of as a baseline when students return. I think it closes in early October, and then it closed again just right at the end of November, right at the trimester transition. And then students will test again with a closing date in March. But there was another 10% growth, and this is the students' chance of passing the state assessment with a passing score. So, and then again, if you look at fourth in the spring 2021 down to the 30% early fall, there was a tremendous growth there for fifth graders, and then a little bit of stagnation. But so some growth, definitely lots better being in person full time than the hybrid schedule that we were in. And then if you can go to the next slide, we can take a look at math. A little less growth in math, and I think we've presented before, and I think this has been kind of a challenging area for the entire district K-12, that math achievement is something we know that we need to work on as a whole. This year, the district hired a math instructional coach, and she's been in this building a lot, just kind of getting to know teachers and kind of figuring out where to kind of best fit in. But I think part of the challenge this year is also trying to take some of that off of teachers' plates. I think this year more than ever, last year was incredibly difficult, but this year I think teachers are just feeling exhausted constantly. And so I think the professional development team in the district has been sensitive to that and kind of been willing to pull back, which I know teachers really appreciate. So. And again, these third graders, this would have been the first time they took a STAR math assessment. And towards the end, we each have some action plan steps. So I'll address some of those there. Next slide, please. The attendance data, this is something that it's on paper, it's definitely not great. I think it will improve hopefully in the near future. And I think some of the reason why the attendance data is so low, it's because it's just looking at students who are present more than 90% of the school days. So up until this very last week, if a student was identified as a close contact, the minimum time for part of it they had to miss was 8 days. So, and that was with the modified kind of testing where they could test on day 5, 6, or 7, come back on day 8. Before that, before we were testing on site, if a student was identified as a close contact to COVID, they had to be out for a full 10 days. If they lived with someone and they could not isolate from that person, they could have missed as many as 20 days of school. So their quarantine period began as the positive person's quarantine period ended. So that's been adjusted. And now kind of worst case scenario-ish is 10 days total, so halving it. We have some students that I was just saying that we're calling tonight that they'll be able to attend school tomorrow, even though they're identified as a close contact today because of the test to stay program. So those students will effectively miss no school because they were identified as a close contact on school. So this attendance data is really low. It's a little difficult to kind of break it down to a granular level and see why each student was gone. But I do know that during this time period, if a student was gone 10 days, they would be outside of the 90% period. So, and we had lots of students quarantine early in the year when we couldn't do test to stay or things like that. So just kind of a little side note for the attendance. And in the past, the district has participated in Everyday Matters and things like that, working on attendance rewards, but we are really encouraging people to stay home if they're not feeling well. And so this is just a challenge this year. So next slide, please. This one also is a little bit of a funny one for me. When we were looking at numbers, again, this is my first year at Chenoweth. We didn't pull the 2021 data for referrals because we were online the first part of the year. And so really no students were getting referrals. At the elementary level, we enter referrals as a major category and a minor category. And Teresa was going to talk a little bit more like kind of what distinguishes those in her presentation. But just talking to some staff in this building, that 18-19 year, on the referral form, it says after 3 minors, it's a major. I think it seemed like staff were confused that year, and just talking to them that every referral after number 3 was recorded as a major referral. And so if it was a small thing, it was just the 4th referral. So that was a major. The 5th referral was a major. And I think that that's why those numbers are so high. We also at Chenoweth have a brand new dean of students, brand new child development specialist. I'm new in the building. And so we're kind of all renorming our processes to figure out what's a major referral. How are we handling these things? We really want to start focusing on restorative practices and looking at underlying behavior instead of punitive discipline measures. So, and some of these things, even in the major category, are like a student cursed. And so those are things that I think as a district, when you look at the discipline data, that we probably as an elementary team, and we've talked about this, need to kind of re-norm and do some work around. Next slide, please. So overall, our plan for academics, we have interventions in reading. So at Chenoweth, we have a 45-minute block of time where students are in something we call win time. So it's what I need. And as we move forward in the year, as more students progress out of the red tier, the highest need of intervention, and more on grade level, we're working in some enrichment activities for those students. So we're challenging those students while also being able to have really small focus groups of interventions for the students that need it the most. We started the after school academy at Chenoweth, and we prioritize students who attended summer school. And so we're working to build that capacity. They're working in conjunction with the migrant after school program. So they're doing some of the similar things. So we're trying to build the capacity in the after school program. And that's a lot of enrichment based stuff. I was in there the other day. They were doing a really cool art project. And the students are really happy to be there. For social emotional learning, we've really focused this year on providing structured breaks to students. So they just have a time in their day that is collaborated with a classroom teacher where they have noticed kind of escalated behavior in the student. And so we're working to get those students out of the classroom to kind of calm themselves so they can spend as much time in the classroom as possible. And the dean of students in all the buildings participated in restorative practices training last month. So some things that we're working on around social emotional development for students. We also are still going to implement the Second Steps program as a tier 1 intervention for students. Classroom teachers are doing morning check-ins and morning circles with students. And then I would just say the ongoing challenges, there's things that other administrators are going to speak to as well. Dealing with safety protocols, staff and student absences. People are just really tired this year. And then for staffing, shortages in both substitutes, and then when classroom teachers can't come in. One of the challenges when staff can't come in, classroom teachers can't come in, we're having to cancel some of those intervention groups so we can have a classroom. So the Title I reading specialist will cover a classroom, or the ELD teachers will cover a classroom. So those are things that are taking away from the overall growth of those students that need that support the most. But our other option is to not have a licensed adult in that classroom. So, and I think that was my last slide.
Thank you, AJ. I'm Carol Dawson. I'm the principal of Colonel Wright Elementary School, and we've made really similar slides, so you will see the same sort of pattern as we go through. Reading slide, please. So you'll notice on the reading achievement slide that it's the same idea that AJ showed you, that in the spring of 2021, the third graders were at 28%. In the fall testing, they were at 31%, and then 32% in the winter. So they've gained 1 percentage during that time. Fifth grade has gone from a 32% in the spring to remaining at a 32%, but they've upped their game with a 7% gain in the winter. And we're just have met on our interventions that we've been doing with students, and even further fine tuning the groupings that we'll be doing with students. Okay, next slide. This is the math achievement data. During the springtime, the students that are in fourth grade were at 14%. They were at 22% in the fall testing, and they remained at 22%. The fifth graders were at 15% in the spring, dropped down to 9% in the fall, but they've gained another 4% in the winter. So as AJ's already alluded to, we have at Colonel Wright, we have one interventionist, and they have actually been working with groups with great need, one of those being our fourth grade group, in math intervention groups as well. Okay, attendance slide. Okay, to me, these are absolutely abysmal because the goal is to have 95% in our school, but understandably, we've had quarantine. We've had students that have had to miss 3 weeks of school because of different relatives being close contacts and having COVID and different things like that. So it's been a frustration this year with that, but hopefully that will change with the Test to Stay program, and it will change even more once we are done with this phase of COVID in our lives. Socio-emotional learning. If you look out here, down here at the major referrals, I was not here in the year 18-19 to speak to what was happening there. 19-20 was my first year. Typically in October, there is a spate of major referrals. It just happens to go up during the period before Halloween, and up it just is not a good time for that. But we started doing a lot of restorative practices in the school, and developing behavior plans and things like that. And we ended up being able to reduce our numbers quite a bit. And this year you can see where we are at 21, 22. I do want to say, though, as far as the socio-emotional learning goes, our students have not had a time to be with each other, learn how to play with each other, learn how to listen to each other, learn how to work with each other, all of those kinds of things that are normal parts of learning with everything I learned in kindergarten kind of idea. It didn't happen the last 2.5 years. So we have really made a pointed effort to deal with these incidents as they come. The counselor teaches a weekly 30-minute SEL lesson in each classroom. He's working with students listening to one another. We have the permission to feel out of Yale University that we use as a staff and with our students in our daily meetings. And when kids come off of the playground and they're traumatized by something that happened or something like that, we will use the mood meter that is part of permission to feel to identify their emotions. And it gives language to that and a way we can talk to students about that. The counselor is also pushing into kindergarten classes where he plays with children in group activities so that they can have an adult there working with them on how to be appropriate. The number of daily check-in and checkouts formal would be the ones that are fairly extreme cases. We have 3 of those, and 14 behavior plans, but 76 people are on a list that the counselor and the CELA check in with daily or every couple of days. So it's quite a bit of checking in. We have 16 friendship groups going, and we do have a kindergarten student that's on a partial day, because they were very, very young for school and they just didn't have the sustainability to make it through the day. So that's kind of where we are there. I do want to say, though, the one regret I have about not having the data up for the previous year, 2021, is that we had very small class sizes when we came together in hybrid. We had 12 students, 12 to 14 students per classroom, and there were no behavior problems that came my way during that time. There were just not the major referrals because student needs were being met in that small group. Okay, next slide. The action plan that we are working with now and that we are growing is that all grade levels are treated as cohort groups. So that means that our reading and our math are walk to groups within the grade level. So students are able to have small groups and keep up with their materials for the grade level. I cannot express enough about the large gap that occurred this year, especially in our 1, 2, 3 band. In second grade, there were students that came to school this year not knowing their letters and how to make sounds and things like that. And then there were some who were at a 4th grade reading level who were only in 2nd grade. So there's a huge difference, and our teachers have been working so hard. They review twice a month together in their teaching PLCs and work to make sure that their students are receiving the correct instruction that they need at the time. So all of the reading and the math program deal with simplified list of standards. They're focused what they really need to get to the next level. And so the teachers are encouraged to go deep and make sure that they have those standards absolutely ingrained before moving on. As I indicated earlier, for our social emotional learning, there's 30 minutes lessons weekly from the counselor. We have built into the schedule a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting. We have daily check-ins with specific students, and communication skills are going to be the focus for the remainder of the year. We promote teacher self-care. In fact, yesterday met regarding self-care again. So we do that twice a month together as a staff. Our counselors have gone to, our dean of students have gone to restorative practices. So they've come back just really, really excited about implementing those kinds of things. And we're going to have kind of like the working on listening and group work. And we're actually being taught how to do those kinds of things in our staff meetings that we have twice a week. And the challenges that we have, families are discouraged. The COVID plans have wrung families out just as much as they have teachers and staff. So there's that ongoing COVID fatigue and the quarantines, the testing and the protocols around that. The lack of substitutes and unfilled positions has been discouraging. We've been fortunate at Colonel Wright to just have one position that's been left unfilled, but Dry Hollow and Chenoweth have dealt with far more. So the lack of access to enough intensive education for students with those intensive needs is something that we just need. We need feet on the ground to work with those students in a even in a deeper way than we currently do, and we're working on trying to figure out how to get that done. Okay, thank you so much for listening.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Peters. I'm principal at Dry Hollow School. Next slide, Cindy. Thank you. At Dry Hollow this year, we have, I believe we're at 440 students at Dry Hollow. Our data is for what we're looking at right now is our STAR reading achievement data. And as AJ, Mr. Rundell already explained, our second graders last year did not take the assessment. And so this year's third graders, it was the first time that they had done the STAR reading and STAR math assessment. So looking at our data, this fall, our third graders scored at 32%, meeting or exceeding the benchmark as far as being projected to meet the state benchmark for reading. And then at the winter testing time, which was the end of the first trimester, we were also at 32%. There were some students in the fall, we had, I believe, there were 9 more students that took the test at the winter testing. And so that may have been a factor there with that, with the numbers there. If you look at this year's fourth graders, this fall, they scored 39% back in the spring. Now remember in the spring, all last year, for 2 trimesters, we had distance learning. And then in the spring, we did have in-person learning, but it was hybrid. And so the students were there in small groups, just as Mrs. Dawson explained, small class sizes, but they were also only there for about 2.5 hours a day. And so this year's fourth graders last year tested at 33% in the spring. And at the winter benchmark, they were at 49%. Our fifth graders in the spring were at 37%, meeting the state performance. And this fall, they're 42%. And then at the end of the trimester, we had 54% with our fifth grade. Cindy, next slide, please. Thank you. With our STAR math achievement data, our third graders in the fall were at 21%. In the winter, at the end of the first trimester, we had 33% projected to meet the benchmark in math. Our fourth graders in the spring, we had 21% the fall, 28%, and then now 24%. Fifth grade in the spring, 28%. This fall, 14% projected to meet the state performance standard. And then at the end of the first trimester, we had 29%. Next slide, Cindy. Thank you. Our attendance data, just as my counterparts have mentioned, we have really reinforced that students and staff that are ill should not be at school due to our COVID protocols. And so in years past, we've really focused on attendance and highly encouraged kids to be at school, et cetera, sent home attendance letters when students were hitting thresholds that were on target to become chronically absent, and set plans in place, et cetera. This year, that is not happening because we want to reinforce that if they're sick, they really do need to stay home. And then you add on top of that the number of students that are needing to quarantine, et cetera. And so not chronically absent means that the student has been present for 90% of the school days of the year so far. And so our data looks similar to the other two elementary schools. It's definitely not where we would like it to be, but I do feel like we are, our families and parents and our staff are taking the COVID protocol seriously, and having kids stay home when they are indeed ill. Next slide, please, Cindy. Thank you. For our social emotional learning and supports, we do have a number of things in place. At the building level, we have things in place to support the climate and culture within the school, as well as at the classroom level. So some classrooms do morning meetings, sometimes they're weekly meetings. As a school, we have our Dry Hollow News that's done every day, and that's just one of the ways that we reach out to build the climate at the school. It's part of our morning news. We have breathing exercises that we do as a whole student body and staff. And then our child development specialist is in each classroom every week teaching lessons on social emotional skills, and that's utilizing the Second Steps curriculum. We also have our SELA team, which is our social emotional learning assistants. We have two of them here at Dry Hollow. They, along with our child development specialist, our dean and myself, work together to with teachers to help support our kiddos that are kind of our tier 2 and tier 3 students that need more support. And so there are 28 students that are currently receiving more targeted supports through our SELA team, and it could be meeting with them every day. Some students meet with a SELA first thing in the morning to just review, to check in and review expectations, how their day is going to go, et cetera. Some students require multiple check-ins during each day, and so it just depends on the student needs. We do have, let's see, I believe we have 6 students on behavior support plans. We have 3 students that over the course of the year have had a shortened day for a period of the year. And then our suspension data, out of school suspension, we have 10 incidents this year involving 3 different students. Our major referral information is here, and it has, it indicates the number of major referrals issued each month of the school year for this year, and then also the last 2 years that were quote unquote more normal. So 2018-19 and 2019-20. A major referral, for something to warrant a major referral, it would be something, aggressive behavior, especially when anger is involved, harassment, bullying, severe disruptive behavior within a classroom or within the school, very unsafe behavior. And please realize that this is, referrals are part of our PBIS positive behavior interventions and supports that we have in place school-wide, some of those structures. And a referral isn't just about the discipline, it's about recording, kind of tracking behavior. And when we utilize that school-wide, but then also for individual students to help us to target interventions. So for example, a student that is regularly having issues lining up at recess, when you start honing in, looking at the referrals of when the behavior is happening, what the behavior is, and you can start then putting in place interventions. If it's lining up, what can we do to help with the impulsive behavior during lining up that's triggering the student to become aggressive, et cetera. And so with referrals, we use it not just as discipline, but it also can help us to structure interventions and behavior supports for our students. Next slide, please. Thank you. Action plan. So we'll continue with our interventions through our RTI process. So that's response to intervention and instruction. And we have structures that are in place, district-wide actually, for RTI. And so we at Dry Hollow, we do have 2 Title I interventionists. One of them focuses just on reading. The other one focuses on reading halftime and then halftime math. And so we're targeting that support, the math support for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. And so with that process, we're going to continue providing those interventions. And we also will be participating, of course, with the English language arts adoption process for a new core reading program. And so, the core reading program is an integral part of the RTI process and structures that are in place. And then we're going to continue with our math interventions that we have in place. It's more limited, but than our reading interventions, and we don't have the structures in place similar to our reading. But we are providing supports for students. And approximately 31% of our students are receiving an intervention through our title program or through our special education department here at Dry Hollow. Also part of our action plan is to continue with the professional development that's happening through our teaching and learning team and our instructional coaches. As far as our social emotional action plan, we're going to continue with our PBIS, positive behavior interventions and supports, and those structures that are in place. We'll continue to provide classroom and school-wide social emotional supports for students. The other thing that I didn't mention, a lot of times classroom teachers will run behavior support plans for individual kids as well. And so those are not noted in our in the data that I shared, but it is a structure and a support for our kids. And then for attendance, we'll just continue focusing on student and staff safety while we encourage attendance as appropriate during COVID. And so ongoing challenges, things that we're continuing to hurdle as we go through the year are the safety protocols involving COVID. That's part of the action plan. We're going to obviously continue those layered protocols and measures that are in place. The physical distancing, the mask wearing, hand washing, contact tracing, and encouraging everyone to stay healthy as much as possible, following those protocols. The staffing is definitely staff shortage. So we have 2 things that are impacting us as far as staffing. The staff shortage. So at the beginning of the year, we started Dry Hollow with a full staff, and we built our schedule and all of our supports and supervision and our screening and check-ins with students with that full staff. And since the start of the year, we've lost 6 staff members due to various reasons. And so those are open positions right now. And so we have the staff shortage, and then we have a substitute shortage as well. Looking at our data, For the month of September, for those staff absences that required a substitute, we had 42% of those absences filled with a sub. In October, it was 54% of those absences were filled. Also in November, it was 54%. December, 52% of the absences that required substitutes were filled. So it's just an ongoing challenge that we face, and we're navigating it as we go. Thankfully, our staff that we have at Dry Hollow is very flexible, and we are everyone just rolls up their sleeves and triages what we need to get through each day. And thank you.
Okay, it's my turn. I'm Sandra Harris, principal of the Dalles Middle School, and I would love to share my data with you. There we go. I did quickly notice that what you had been receiving in your packet actually was some extra data where you were able to see fall of 2019, 2020, and then fall of 2021. So you can see what a normal fall looks like in terms of reading and math data. But I do also have here our reading data as it turns all last year and then this year. Notice the sixth graders went from 39% to 35%. And seventh graders went from 35 to 35, and our eighth graders went from 33 to 41% from early fall to late fall. So it's on, it's a little up from 2020-21 when we were online. I think that one of the things that's unique in our reading, eighth grade reading, is that we have their eighth grade reading teacher taught seventh grade last year. So he looped up with his kids. I'm just not wanting to hang all the apples on that, but I think that really does tell a difference with, he doesn't have all of his same kids, but I would say at least half to 2/3 of his kids he had last year as seventh graders. So those relationships that he built last year as it was just continued on, I believe, with our eighth grade. And we've got some amazing eighth grade teachers that are doing this. Also working with the data, noticing that the spring, seventh grade spring, 32% went up in early fall. So a little bit more of our kids are coming back from online and from a hybrid system last spring. So, and that's reflected in these times as well. Okay. Next slide. In our math achievement data, we do see the drop as we did have across the district so far. However, we noticed that in early fall and late fall, we do have some gains, and we also have a little bit higher in some areas in early fall than we'd had last spring. So again, we have some kids that are coming back to us from our hybrid and from online last year. But you can see that we've had, great growth and growth in areas that we may not have expected, but it's pretty on par to what we saw in the fall of 2021 and even previous. It is pretty low or on par to what we saw in the fall of 2020 as well. I also wanted to mention too that the advanced math course participation, on the left side here, we have 15% of our sixth graders are in advanced math and 16% of our sixth graders and 16% of our seventh graders are in advanced math. And we have 22% of our kids are in algebra. We also have 6 students that have finished, 8th grade students have finished advanced math algebra, and they are going up to the high school to geometry every day. So you see this group of 6 students, and it's great to see them off and to have them come back getting their advanced math. So they're doing quite well. In the math, we did notice that in the early fall, only 80% of our kiddos took the early fall math achievement star data. So we have more of them. We have actually probably 98% of our kids took the late fall test. So there may be a little bit of a difference in there. So the skills to go into the math course have always been the same. And so I think the online has really diminished some of that with the lowering of the numbers. But we did in August and September, we had our teachers, our 6th grade teachers identify, and also our 7th grade teachers identify students who could possibly be advanced students. They had the motivation and their early testing. We did do some shifting that took place. So they may not have started the first day of school, but within a couple of weeks, we had more kids going into the advanced once we really had eyes on and what their work habits and how they're doing and what their skills were. We did assess them, and we put more into the advanced course as we could. Okay, next slide, please. Our attendance too has dropped as always. Just the same reasons, the COVID, the protocols. We also uniquely have encountered, maybe not uniquely in middle school, it's a little bit of a shift from our 5th grade students coming in. And the last time they were full-time in school was in 4th grade. So that jump from 4th to 6th grade has, really kind of diminished some of, I don't want to blame everything on quarantining, but we do notice that some of the students are having a harder time with the transition into middle school. We've also noticed some anxiety things coming in, not anxiety of being at school, but more being in large crowds, anxiety about being around other students, and all of that social, emotional, hormonal actions that happen during these middle school, these wonderful middle school years. We do see some of that as part of our attendance dropping this year, so it's not, in our cases, it's not all because of quarantining. I do believe that, maybe middle school students are a little better at wearing their masks or keeping them up and those kinds of stuff. So we didn't have maybe as many quarantine, but we do have that social emotional issues that we're combating. Our counselors are really talking with students, encouraging, talking with parents. How can we help support our students to be here at school? So just to, middle school, that's what we are. All right, thank you. Next slide. When it comes to social emotional learning and data, we did provide a survey to students. There were 69% of our students participated in this survey. Some students didn't answer all of the questions, but as you see, really taking a look at, our other students are showing the respect. Do they have an adult that they know they can come to? Also, are they feeling safe, and do they feel like they belong? I presented this to my climate and culture team, and we had great discussions about, do they really understand what respect means? Do they respect each other? Can they respect adults? Do they understand that? Also, what does it mean to belong? They may think, well, I'm 12, I'm a 7th grader, I belong here because this is a middle school, and I don't belong at the elementary, and I don't belong at there. But really, that sense of feeling and that sense of belonging. So we have come up with a plan that when we do provide this survey again, we'll have a little bit of education along with it to say, are these some of the feelings you're feeling? Do you belong? Are you connected? Do you feel connected with an adult at school? And so, the data that we have also collected, we are able to zero down on some of the names. And so some of those that are in the strongly or the disagree area, we can then identify and help support in those areas. Next slide, thank you. The discipline data, we have out of school discipline from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and this is for just trimester 1 this year. And the number of incidents in 6th grade, we had 15 incidents, which comprised of 11 students. In 7th grade, we have 5 incidents of out of school, which comprised of 4 students, and 19 students made up 33 incidents of out of school suspension this fall. Although, you know, we do definitely try to keep kids in school, either, you know, a part of an ISS in school suspension or an all day in school suspension, just to kind of take a little break of what's going on. Students do their homework, we gather their homework. We do have an adult supervisor, a monitor in the ISS room that works with them on their homework, as well as on behavior reflection sheets, so that she could talk with them and have them reflect upon what's going on. And so as you see that we broke those into the number of days. So 36 graders had 47 days. A lot of them had just one day in the fall. A couple of them had a couple of different days or a couple of different incidents as well. 29 of our students in 7th grade had 57 days of ISS, and 39 of our 8th graders had 90 days of in-school suspension. So she was quite busy. We do mix 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They're pretty well separated in the classroom, but they do mix. So we could have, you know, an 8th grader, 2 7th graders, and a 6th grader all in one day that comprise on those. So. I also broke down our top 5 behaviors for trimester 1. And I really wanted to see, you know, our middle school behaviors changing over the years. And truly, this is the data from 1920 when we were in school, 2021 when we were not in school in the fall, and 21, 22 when we were here this year. So notice that, you know, 1920 actually had prompted the SIA funds to help support us with a dean of students. That was when it was, you know, we need some help in here. And, you know, the disruption of learning this year, you know, 110 incidences, and those are 110 referrals. And defiance of authority has been number 2 all across 3 years, and that's 119. Disrespect has been number 3. And we get a little bit of a difference between physical aggression and harassment and bullying. But notice that in 21, 22 this year, we had more incidents of harassment and bullying. I think that this year particularly, kids are struggling on knowing how to interact with each other. What do you do when they don't look at you right, or when they say a snide comment? They really are having some issues with how are they interacting with each other. It's been a long time since they've been in the same sandbox. And so we also see that, you know, this year with physical aggression and fighting. So not as many incidences as 1920. But remember, 1920, we were in the school year for 2/3 of the year. So that was a busy year. So top 5 behaviors. All right, next slide, thank you. So we also have some achievement data to share. Students earning 1 or more failing grades. And we have a comparison from bottom to top this year. We noticed that in person in 6th grade in 2019, 41% of our 6th graders had 1 or more failing, 40% had 1 or more failing, and 43% of our 8th graders had more than 1 failing. So we are down in numbers. We have fewer students that have one or more failing grades. I think students are really glad to be in school and happy to have a teacher in front of them. I think there's a best case showing their effort to improve, and you know, things are better than what they were online. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing this data even continue to reduce. We also have the data students failing all classes in trimester 1. So in person, we were still in person in 2019, and you see the percentage 1%, 1.5, and 2.5% of our students in 8th grade. And when we were in online trimester 1 in 2020, that number significantly went up. So we had 18% of our 6th graders, 21% of our 7th graders, and 24% of our 8th graders who failed every class. This year, again, we're seeing I'm glad to be at school. I'm going to try my hardest. I'm going to try a little harder. So 0% of our 6th graders failed every class this first trimester. 1% of our 7th graders and 3% of our 8th graders failed every class for various reasons. The action plan, you know, we have actions in place and actions that we're putting in place for our academic supports for our reading and math. We were blessed to have a intervention specialist hired this fall to help with our STAR data compilation and also our interventions that we have going on. And so we've started a book club with piloting reading interventions for our 7th graders at this point. Intervention specialist, she's supporting one-to-one work in our ELA classes and our math classes and ELL classes, pulling kids out, reading with them for 10 minutes, putting them in, doing a reading assessment, sharing data with them. We're also using MobyMax program for students to work on their missing skills, and every teacher has access to that. So you see it a lot in math and reading, but we also see it in our Pride homeroom classes that they're able to work on missing skills with MobyMax. This year, we had changed things around where our remedial ELA and math courses, our special ed math courses, are taught by licensed math and ELA teachers and co-taught with the special ed. So they have a special ed and a licensed math ELA teacher working with a small number of kids who are looking at that remedial level of math and language arts. Definitely continued professional development and engagement strategies that supports every classroom, every teacher to get the kids talking, learning about how to work in groups, how do you become a tribe. Those engagement strategies based on CM and AVID strategies are going to be working with our professional development on Wednesdays for sure. The use of STAR assessment to increase the number of interventions class, that's our intervention specialist, is taking a look at that data, taking a look at those kiddos that are most likely to meet, that are close to meeting, and providing some intervention courses and intervention classes as we go along. We have the opportunity to we have some teachers ready to go to change their elective class into an intervention class. So the STAR data and our intervention specialist will help us to do that. We're also, next week, we're going to be also having kids set goals in math, ELA, and Pride, the goal setting process, and really taking a look at here's where you are in STAR data. We haven't done this for a few years. And here's a goal, or what goal do you want to have? And just give them the opportunity to set their own goals and to meet in STAR scores, attendance, tardies, as well as grades. I think that given them the awareness that they are in control of this, and these are things that they can be working on, and we are here to help you. I've seen great success with that. Also, we're on the adoption, working on an ELA curriculum that has a wealth of intervention supports for teachers. If we can provide the structure and the class, what is the curriculum, or what is the support and you know, the intervention curriculum that they can use in order to help support students. slide. As far as SEL support, social emotional learning, we do a second steps middle school version once a week, every week with the kids. We also have a What's Strong With You partnership with You Think, and Jensine comes in and she's working with about 15 or more students. When we have house meetings, that's the house of teachers that work with the same groups of kids. They talk about the needs and the social emotional needs and the academic needs of the students that they work with. And so it's a great collaboration to come up with teams of supports for each of the kids. And also the survey results will help us to hone in on what their understanding of, do they have a sense of belonging, and how we can improve that. Our Wednesday late start house meetings collaborating. Also the student mental wellness survey, pre and post extended. So we have a survey that goes out pre-school break, so before Christmas break and after Christmas break, a survey that really takes a look at their mental health and wellness. As we know, some of our students would rather be at school than be out for 2 or 3 weeks. And so just really there's some questions that we kind of take a look at, and how we can help and support students who may not be wanting to spend that much time in their home environment. We also have student assistant team meetings to take a deeper dive into student cases. So we have our counselors, our admin, and our behavior specialists of the district, and our school psychologists or special ed teachers working with together once a week and meeting to look at academic, social, emotional behaviors to see if we can dive into if there is something that is outside supports that they need, or getting some testing done ultimately, but what interventions can we use in the class in order to help support our kids. Next slide. And behavior support. So it's really systematically reteaching expectations as part of our PBIS program, having reward days, having a point system. It's a stamp system that kids can earn stamps in classes for doing well and doing what they're supposed to do and doing something that's unexpected as well. And so we'll have a dodgeball opt-in. They can buy things from the student store with their stamps. We'll have an ice cream break. I think we're planning for second trimester a movie and popcorn break. So they can buy and opt into that. So they're earning stamps. Many parent support meetings, really calling the parents in, wrapping around, saying, how can we help? What are the needs? We do a lot of that. And I'm really pleased that the parents are even calling us and saying, hey, this is going on, and how can we help make this better so that they can stay in school? I really do appreciate that. We also have alternative classes. We have some kiddos who are taking an Acellus class, one here, one there, in order to fill out their day. We do have behavior contracts, alternative schedules, which could include a part day schedule, selected electives, particular electives that they can do or do repeat as they have success in there. Also a hybrid Acellus day. So they may be in periods 1, 2, and 3, and then finish their day in an alternative learning center for 5 and 6 on Acellus to finish out their classes. Sometimes it's the stamina that we have found that they just are not able to maintain. And it just is easier for them to be able to be in a quiet place to do their work online. That could be for an extended time, and it could be just for a short time, depending on the student needs. Currently, we have 9 students on behavior contracts that they started probably 3 or 4 weeks prior to Christmas break. And I'm really happy to say that probably 95% of them are doing really well and are earning their way off of the contract and actually earning their way into more privileges for them. So that's kind of combating some of the behaviors that we have had. 5 students are on alternative schedules, and that could be for either anxiety reasons or, multiple reasons, but that could be that part day selected electives or hybrid Acellus classes. So, and I think some of the challenges, I'm sorry, Cindy, some of the challenges really, we're not fully staffed, and we kind of feel that. We specifically feel that when we are taking some of our ESPs out of the classroom and putting them into lunch duty, because we have 200 kids at a time at lunches. So, we're feeling the effects of having less adults in the building than we have in the past. And so, that's tough. And really not really tongue in cheek challenges, TikTok challenges. We're middle school, so they tend to thrive on some of those, and that's just can be really devastating and not a positive influence on our kiddos. So, and I would reiterate all of the other, the COVID changes, and making sure that we're keeping our kids and staff safe and healthy. And some days are more challenging than others in contact tracing and whatnot, but all the challenges with staffing, no subs, it is challenging, as everyone else has said. So thank you. If you have any questions, you can give me a call.
Okay, hi everyone, good evening. Next slide, please. The first one here, this just gives a snapshot of where everything stands at the end of trimester 1. And this is what we measure. It's called like I said, it's on track for graduation by grade level. And that's measured by earning 6 credits per year or 2 credits per trimester. And you can really visually see how impactive the shutdown and lockdowns last year were to our 10th grade class and 11th grade, as such a high proportion of their high school career was impacted by that. So the good news, or a good part of this, is that the 8th or the 9th graders came in this year, and 85% of them earned at least 2 credits out of 2.5 credits, and they look like previous years. And so that's the good side of it. On the 12th grade side of it, that class is 79%. So we would expect a graduation rate of in the mid 80s out of that group. And so we have time, still, and for those middle grades to get through this, but you can very visually see the impact there. So next one, please. And I've shared this one before. This is kind of the historical, what it's looked like over the years. And if you kind of move diagonally, as those colors kind of go diagonally in that's kind of how each cohort has kind of progressed. And then that bottom row is the graduation rate at the end of that year, how that class graduated, or in this case, it's just the 12th grade class and what percent they are on track. Class of 2020 was our best year for graduation rate. We were almost 93%. The 2021 data, I know it's not that high for graduation rate, and that's embargoed right now, but that should be released pretty soon. Okay, go to next one. I track 2 groups, or primarily have over the years, and these are, the high performing group of students and the low performing group of students. And the way I measure this high performing group is just, how many students are earning only A's and B's out of the entire student population. And if you have a critical mass in your building that is high performing, it tends to trickle out and keep the rigor high for other students. And so you want that to be as high as possible. So if you go back to 2016, that was the year that Nick was a principal. We moved to the trimester, and we ran the same bell schedule that we're running now. And a bell schedule, the way you run your schedule, that is an intervention in of itself at a high school level. And So what we're doing with the schedule this year, and did it all the way back in 16, is it's the same daily schedule. We release school at 2:45, and then students have 45 minutes to access their teachers individually. And it's a simple intervention, but having that daily time for teachers to go in and get one-on-one help is hugely beneficial. And we'd move that time throughout the years at other points in the day, and it was never as beneficial as it was when we did it back in 16. So even before COVID was upon us, we were planning on going back to that schedule. And right away, we're seeing the results trimester 1 with this group. It's just just having that individual time helps. And so on the next slide, go ahead and go to the next slide. This is the, I guess, the underperforming group or the at-risk group. Next slide, please. Next slide. There you go. That's the kind of the underperforming or the at-risk group. And so anytime a student fails a class, there's just this trickle-down effect, and it means they have to repeat the class. They can't take an elective that they want. They identify as being a failure. You have to assign resources and remediation. All bad things happen when kids fail a class. So we try to put a lot of things in place to not have kids repeat failing of classes. And so this is just, you can just see the percentage of students that'll earn an F in a trimester over the years. And obviously our high mark was 2020, and I left 2021 out just of the grading here, just because we changed the grading system we were, doing a bunch of different things throughout the year. So just no good way to track it. But 2020, that had the spring of COVID when I don't remember what we were doing, everything was online. But you can see 2022, we're back down to, a quarter of our kids earning an F, which we still want to, that's still, too high. So we're always trying to do things to mitigate that. Okay, next one. CTE participation, what these two graphs represent is our participation in CTE classes. We have 6 programs: welding, automotive, construction, graphic design, culinary, and computer science. So the percentage of our student body that has participated in a CTE class is 70% this year. And back in 2020, again, I skipped last year because we had 2 programs that were down. We were at about 62%. So that's come up. So it's a good thing. We have a lot of participation in those classes. And then our advanced placement as well has come up about not quite 2%, a little bit. Inside those numbers, what I'm doing as the principal, though, is I'm always going into those numbers and looking for discrepancies and disproportionalities. Because what you don't want is certain groups of students overly or underly represented in these figures. And I will say, from a standpoint of ethnicity and socioeconomic background, we are balanced in both CTE and AP. But we're not balanced in is gender participation. And you'll see we struggle with this in many years, but we see an overrepresentation of male students in CTE, about a 1-to-2 ratio, and an underrepresentation of male students in AP. And again, it's about a 1-to-2 ratio there, but in reverse. So there's things underneath these numbers that we are always looking at, but again, our participation is good. We're back to normal or better than normal this year. So go ahead and go to the next one, please. Wanted to dig into, even before COVID, I wanted to dig into clubs and activities and see how many students were, connected to the high school in some way other than just academics. I went through this fall. We really pushed participation in both clubs, activities, and athletics, and on part of the students. So now we have almost 40% of our students involved in a club or activity, which I've never counted it before, but it seems high. That seems good. And then on the athletic side, we're at 33%. And fall, what we did with athletics is we completely removed the participation fees this year. And right away, we saw an 18% increase in fall fall athletic participation in sports. And now winter sports, we're seeing a 40% increase in participation. So, you know, a couple things, we've pushed involvement in both of these areas, but that financial factor, I know that's helped. And so we've never had 3 basketball teams, and we do now for both boys and girls. It's not good that we had to cut players, but if you're having to cut players, it means you have a lot of people out. So anyway, so participation is good, and we've really, and I'll talk about why the reasons why we pushed participation, encourage participation later on. Okay, the next one, the attendance. So I pulled this for the other schools too, and I saw the elementary, middles, and the high school is lower than average or lower than normal, but we're higher right now than the other schools. And I think one of the things I think can attribute to that is the vaccination rate at the high school. And when I counted or looked at that back in October, and about 2/3 of the students were already vaccinated. And so when you go through do the close contacts, what's happening, at the elementary and middle, where not as many kids are vaccinated, or none at all, maybe at the elementary, is any kid that's close contact, they have to stay home. And that's why we're seeing such a low attendance rate at those levels. At the high school level, only 1 out of 2 ends up having to quarantine because of their vaccination status. So I know it's higher than 2/3 now. It's probably closer to 3/4 of the students are vaccinated. So anyway, so that's where we're at. A normal year should be about 80%. It should be 80% district-wide, and even higher than that at the elementary levels. That's what we normally see. But that's one of the things that I think could be attributed to why the high school is a little bit higher right now, and that's just the access to vaccinations. So. Okay, next one, please. Social and emotional learning, this is just our raw discipline data. These are the severe offenses, I guess, the ones that have led to suspension. There weren't too many things in here that were overly represented, I guess. The fighting and the assault, there was 5 and 3 in there. Those are a little bit higher than normal. And I know Sandy, has experienced this to a great degree at the middle school too. But, just in general, I just felt like kids coming back from lockdown were they're just angry. They're just, I don't know how to say it, but just mad at the world or whatever. I mean, they've been shut down and locked down, especially especially for the middle schoolers and the 9th graders that can't get out and do anything, and it just is devastating to them. It's traumatizing. And so they came back and, tearing apart the bathrooms and just all kinds of garbage like that and getting in fights. So I felt like we saw a little bit more of that this year. The vandalism, only one, thing on vandalism, but we just didn't really catch very many kids. There was a lot of vandalism this year, but we didn't really catch any kids or very many. The thefts, those were people were ripping off masks or going through and stealing masks that were on the tables. And anyway, just weird stuff like that you wouldn't see in a normal year. But other than that, nothing greatly sticks out. I mean, the way we kind of approach this at the beginning of the year, from our standpoint, the majority of the kids, from a emotional standpoint at the high school level, the bottom line is they need school and life to get back to normal. And for most of the kids, that will be enough. Okay. You just get them back to normal. You let them have an athletic event. You put them in music and drama and whatever, and you get school back to normal. And that will help the majority. We, counseling, this is kind of a tier, the good old PBIS tiered model. And we felt like that would be the first level of intervention for most people. And that's why we were encouraging and trying to break down barriers for involvement in school. And then the next one is, of course, just our counselors and dealing with that second level of intervention, and then bringing in outside agencies for the most intensive. What we did, I did have the staff, we engaged in it's called the QPR Institute. It's a suicide sort of prevention model and you do it just building wide. So we did have the entire staff engage in that training at the beginning of this school year in one of our in-service days. And it's just a way to address students that are having suicidal thoughts. And it's a philosophy around being open about discussions around suicide. And it's okay to talk about it. If you talk about it, doesn't mean you're going to do it. So if you want more information or curious more what that is or what that looks like, I'll be happy to share that later. Okay, action plan. There's a lot that there we go. So I mean, there's a lot more that we are all doing than we're going to probably share tonight. And so I'm trying to be as, keep it concise, I guess, here. I mean, for me, the bottom line is we just have to stay open as much as possible. I mean, I know cases are going up, but whatever we can do to try to keep, school athletics activities. I met with Dr. Bernal and Billy earlier this week. We're doing a few things, maybe taking away concessions out of athletics, but really trying to keep things, regardless of what's happening around us, keeping the doors open for our kids. I mean, those 5 snow days, they felt a little bit like lockdown for me, and I wasn't liking how that felt, and I know the kids weren't. So, and there might not be anything we can do about it, but that's really, in my mind, the most important thing that we do is we just stay open. The second thing, of course, is like I talked about, just creating opportunities for students to connect to the school outside their normal classroom. And we were engaged in this even prior to, COVID and everything, but that, and it's just common knowledge when students are connected to school in some other way besides the classroom, they do better in the classroom. From an academic, the third one there, that from an academic standpoint, we, and I noticed this also from pulling the STAR data at the elementary level, that the when we were locked down, the reading data, was not hurt as much as the math data was. The math learning really suffered, and we knew it was suffering during that lockdown. And so I have 2 teachers that are focusing on Algebra 1 with 9th graders. I mean, that particular class is critical. If they fail that class at 9th grade, they have only about a 20% chance of graduating on time. And so that 9th grade math class is really critical. And we, in the past, pre-COVID, we had terrible failure rates in that 9th grade math class, just terrible. I mean, midterm, it'd be 50% of the kids would be failing, and then maybe 30% maybe. I mean, just really abysmal numbers, failure rates. So I've last year worked with 2 specific math teachers on just ways to improve that and get kids, better prepared for passing this. And so we went to a 3-term Algebra 1 class. And so all 9th graders take math all 3 trimesters. Most, they used to just take it 2, like English is 2, 1 credit is 2 trimesters. So they take it all 3. And these 2 teachers, Dan Myers and Judy Data, we just talked about hitting wherever these kids are at. I mean, we don't know where they're at after being a year off, just hit them where they're at. And so this first term, that's what they did. And like, Ms. Dowsett, Carol was talking about having kids come in really low. Well, that's what they saw too. They saw kids just coming in incredibly low in math. But the bottom line is there was the failure rate was less than 9% that first term. And as opposed to, 25, 30% in years past. And here we are now midterm of the second, and we're still, under 15%. So anyway, so that's from an academic standpoint, trying to prevent the failure. There's a lot of focus on that, not just math wide, but very, very specifically 9th grade algebra. And then summer school and credit recovery is needed. That's an after the kid has failed, you do that. And that's not what you want to do, but in this climate that we're in, it's absolutely needed. And the teachers did an excellent job last year, summer school. 135 credits were given out to students. And so just to put that into context, one high school teacher throughout a school year with teaching 4 classes per trimester, about 25 kids, they'll give out about 150 credits in a year. That's kind of what one teacher does in a full year. So if 135 credits were earned in summer school this last summer, that's kind of equivalent of what we saved in remediation. We kind of saved almost a full FTE by having those kids go through summer school. And Phil Williams, my VP, he directed that. I mean, they just did an excellent job. Okay. And then the last one, I talked a little bit about our schedule, our bell schedule. I really think that's been critical of getting more kids to pass and more kids perform higher. And that's just that additional, you give up things, there's no perfect schedule. There's always a trade-off. The trade-off for us, we're allowing kids more access time to their teachers after school, but the trade-off is a little less PD time for us as a staff. I'm feeling that we're always pushed. We don't have good extensive, like we did with Late Start Wednesdays, but I feel it's worth it. I mean, I look back at the grade data and I'd rather have more kids getting A's and B's than us doing PD. I mean, that's just the trade-off right now. And we're looking at other ways to increase our professional development time with staff, but right now I really feel that this schedule is working. So anyway, and that's it. And we have a great staff here. Some of the other challenges with subs, we have had that same difficulty that the staff has been great here about covering for their colleagues on the preps. We have had a few uncovered. I don't think it's been as bad as maybe some of the other schools, but we're just terrific. I'm really thankful for them, and they're getting us through. So that's all I have. So thank you, and on to the next person.
Hi, I'm Amy Hampton. I am the new Student Services Coordinator, Student Services Director for North Wasco County School District. I kind of have a unique opportunity. I taught in this district for 17 years. So I walked in with a lot of classroom experience and a lot of view from the bottom, now moving to the top to try to learn what I need to do to improve our school district. I don't have the same level of data that the rest of the presenters have tonight. Mine is more just telling you more about our department and making sure you understand what it is that we are facing in this year and with all the changes that we have coming up. Let's get started. So this is my department by the numbers. We have 432 students in special education. Just as a point of reference, Teresa mentioned that we have about 440 students at Dry Hollow. So as a special ed department, we have about the equivalent of an elementary school, of a large elementary school that we manage. In that, we manage 17 different programs, only one director, just me. And so the rest of that, you can see who we have working for our department. The number down there at the bottom is the one that's really impacting us the most. Currently, we have 13 open positions in our department. They are a lot of educational assistants, but there's also some therapeutic positions that we are not able to fill right now. And it's really having an impact on the district, which I'll talk a little bit more about as we move on from here. Those 432 students, you can see in the top graph where they're broken out by school. Then at the bottom, it also talks about the disability categories. We currently have, there's currently 11 categories that students can be qualified for special education. A student can also have more than one eligibility category. They have a primary, a secondary, sometimes even more than that. This is just the primary eligibility categories. So we actually have more than this that is in our district, but this is what their number one explanation for why they qualify for services. Just as a point of information, that 432 students equivalent is about 16% of our school district. Okay, on to our next one. Over the next two slides, I'm going to break down those 432 students and the staff members into where they all work and what that looks like for us. So first is the Dallas Middle School. There we have 81 students. They are split up a little bit differently, or this is, I guess, middle school students in general, because I'm including virtual in there as well. Our students are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but then we have something that's called the SLC, or the Structured Learning Center. This is for our students with more significant communication needs. We tend to think of it as students with higher needs, but a lot of it we really do try to base on communication. So for those students that we have a very specific guideline that we follow for placing them in our Structured Learning Center. Currently at the middle school, we have 3 resource teachers who cover 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We have, unfortunately, one of our resource teachers had to move out of the area due to some family emergencies. So she has stayed on as doing the case management for us. So that's why we have that extra half-time case manager there. So we have 3 resource teachers plus a half-time case manager. We currently have 6 resource assistants, but that is down 3 from where we would like to be and to be able to do optimal services at the middle school. Our SLC program has 1 teacher and 2 assistants. Again, that is down 2 assistants, but luckily right now the program's a little bit smaller than usual. So it's working out, but it still would be really nice to have those extra bodies in the building if possible. We have a speech pathologist who works in the building about half-time, and we used to also have a speech pathology assistant who was there 6/10, but she's no longer with the district either, and we've not been able to fill that position. Moving on to the high school level, this is where it gets really interesting. People think about us having the main campus of the high school and possibly they think of Riverbend. But from a special ed lens, we actually have about, I think it's 11 on there, programs that we serve. Each grade level of the high school, we have to consider slightly differently because of the needs of those students and what they're trying to accomplish in that year. We then serve students who are over at Kelly Avenue, which is a joint effort with the Next Door Incorporated. We have students over at the Watauga campus who are in the Alternative Learning Center, which is an Acellus-based program. At the main campus, we also have a Structured Learning Center program. Over at the Watauga campus, again, we have a program called Transition 21, which serves our students who are 18 to 21 years old. A student in special education, if they graduate with a modified or extended diploma, they are entitled to services until they're 21 years old. So we have a program that serves those students working on job skills, life skills, whatever they need to take them the next step into adulthood. That also is, while we do have a program, it also is just a service. So, and it's just, we can provide that service to any student who would like it. It doesn't mean that they have to come to the program every day. So there are students who have worked with us who may not walk into the campus every day, but they are still receiving special education services. Riverbend continues to be on our caseload. And then we also have some students this year who are considered virtual students, but they are not attending ALC because their parents do not want them to come in the building at all. So we are having to serve them additionally to those students who are in the Alternative Learning Center. Okay, on to the next one. And I apologize, this is a really busy slide, but I thought it was great to be able to see all this information at once. So I was super proud of myself for figuring out how to make Venn diagrams on here. So Oregon is what's referred to as a single gateway state. So as long as you qualify for any form of special education, you can then get any service that you need. A lot of students start off possibly at the early intervention level needing speech services. They would then qualify for just speech eligibility. That means that our speech pathologist would be the one that manages their case. As soon as we add any additional service, if they get occupational therapy or they get physical therapy, or they maybe need a little bit of reading help, their case management then shifts over to the resource teacher. So then they are shared between both of the people. So if you look at these numbers, if somebody is just speech, then the case manager for them, the case manager of record is the speech pathologist. Once they are in the resource or in the center of the Venn diagram, they are case managed by the resource teacher. So this is all of the different programs or the different elementary schools. Mosier counts as elementary and middle that we have in the district. And you can see the staff that we have in each of those locations. Down at Chenoweth, there's a little extra circle there in the Venn diagram. That is our Structured Learning Center program at the elementary level. There is only one program in the district. So regardless of where a student would typically attend school, if they need that level of program, they are served over by the program at Chenoweth Elementary. Over on the right-hand side where you see Crossroads, that is our day treatment program that we're currently in the process of working with Trillium Family Services to bring in more mental health and kind of firm up that program. We currently have 1 teacher there and 2 assistants, and there's 4 students. And those students are not necessarily special education students, but the grant funding that pays for the programming is managed through special ed. So they are so I manage that program. The reason I put the star there next to the 2 assistants is the reason I have 2 assistants in that program is because I had to move those 2 people. In December, we had a retirement of the teacher and the 2 assistants. And so when the teacher retired, one of her assistants moved into the teacher role. One of the other assistant got a position over at the Dalles High. So it meant that I had no assistants for that program. So I had to take them from other programs in the district in order to keep that program afloat. If you look across the chart, whenever there's a negative, it means that's how many staff we are down in those programs that we would normally have serving students. In the center is our virtual program, and we have been lucky enough to find a special ed teacher who was willing to work with our virtual students. And then we have an educational assistant who, due to her own family medical needs, wanted to remain virtual this year and has been a phenomenal addition to that virtual program. And I would not have maintained my sanity without them this year. So I'm very pleased to have them on board. Okay, moving on. Challenges that we're facing as a department. So when a student is qualified for services, they have to be evaluated by a school psychologist. That is required for any student that we look at cognitive testing, for any students we're looking at behavioral testing, and for really analyzing any of the data around a student, we need somebody with a higher level of training. We do not have one of those in our district. Previously, we have had one through the, our educational service district, through the ESD here in town. So we did have somebody on staff. This year, they were unable to find someone. So instead, we are dealing with somebody who is only available virtually. What we're doing now is how they have to interact with our students. One of those that we're dealing with is up in Canada. The other one is back in Tennessee. It makes for some very challenging situations to make sure that we can interact. For some of our students, it makes the evaluations all but inaccessible, especially our higher needs students. So that has been a serious challenge for us. We currently only have one occupational therapist, and her caseload is 121 students, which is really not functional. Staffing shortages. Our speech language pathology, we are down one SLPA, speech language pathology assistant. We would really like to be able to hire another pathologist to be able to do a caseload rather than just providing services. Jobs been posted for 2 months with no applicants. And as I mentioned earlier, we're currently down 11 educational assistants, which has a significant impact on our ability to serve students in their classrooms and really keep our inclusion going the way we'd like it to. Our staff, I am very, very excited that we have teachers in every position. Unfortunately, a lot of them are brand new to this. I have 5 teachers who are currently on emergency licensure, meaning that they do not have a special ed background necessarily. So we are needing to do additional supports for them to make sure that they understand the policies and the procedures and to keep everything moving forward. I have one teacher with less than 3 years experience and another veteran teacher who, God love her, jumped in with both feet to a role that she has never done in her entire life, working with our highest need students. And so just the level of support that's needed for all that staff has been significant. And as mentioned on the first slide, I'm our only person. So in order to provide that service, we try to have some, peer-to-peer interaction, but given the overwhelming state of where everyone is this year, it's really fallen a lot to me and our AFA staff here to deal with that. Last thing that's a big challenge for us right now is we do not have any bilingual teachers in the special ed department. And we only have a couple of, actually, I guess we do now, so we have somebody at the middle school who stepped up into a role, but we do not, and we only have a couple of bilingual educational assistants. So when it comes time for our IEP meetings, the translation and interpreting services that we need are above and beyond just having typical conversation. We're having really high level technical conversations with some medical information, and we have very few people who are able to do that for us. Currently, I've been a teacher reached out to me and said, hey, I have a student who's a newcomer. We think there's cognitive challenges, who can do some assessment for him, but it needs to be done in Spanish. And I currently don't have somebody. So that's one of the things I'm looking at right now is how do I provide that service for my families and for our students? So what do I want to do to improve the district, improve my department? So next steps, I have big goals. I have big plans for us. Have to remember that this is a long-term job, not 1 year. So right now, ongoing training procedures and processes, just like I said, we have a lot of brand new staff, a lot of staff that last year with COVID, we had to do things differently. And then this year we've come back and they've given us some new procedures we have to do. So making sure that our monthly, I meet with my staff. Like I said, I have the same amount of staff basically as an elementary school would have, but they're distributed across the district. So finding time to pull everyone together can be really challenging. I have one staff meeting a month where I try to include all of my teaching staff We have morning meeting and afternoon meeting, but it's only once a month. So anything I need to get out to them, at times it feels a little overwhelming. My big plan, my next step is to create a leadership team. We don't have a vision statement for my department. We don't have a mission statement for my department. And we don't have a big vision for where we're going. I have it in my head, but as a department, we haven't had that conversation. So I'm going to be creating a leadership team for my department to help us move forward into the next couple of years. We really need to increase our staffing. Guarantee we need an occupational therapist and a speech pathologist, getting somebody in district to do our psychology services. And we used to have a position called a special ed coordinator, kind of the equivalent to like the deans in the buildings, where it would be somebody who could go out, meet with the teachers, meet with the staff, help do observations, and alleviate some of that from me so I could focus on the administrative part of my job. And I'm really hoping to be able to bring back that role if possible. As I mentioned earlier, we have a transition program in the district. I would really, really like to set up, and hopefully we're gonna get this started at Chenoweth to begin with, at least in the next month or so, doing an internship program. The students in the transition program need job skills. We have jobs that need to get done. This would be a great way for us to teach them in-house, make sure that they have the support that they need, so we could then hopefully send students out in the community ready to work in jobs. Our structured learning center programming is phenomenal, but could be stronger. We have students who right now, once you enter SLC, it kind of ends up being the place that you spend the rest of your educational career. And I think that with a little bit of tightening of some of the procedures and with a little increase of training, we would be able to have those students included more in regular ed and possibly moving through structured learning center rather than it being their lifetime. One of the things that I'm working on is that in collaboration with our HR department is that currently my teachers are evaluated using the same rubric as every other teacher in the district, but their roles and their responsibilities are significantly different. So we're looking at adding and switching around just a little bit on that to make it more appropriate and applicable for the staff that works in special education. This year in August, we're going to have some in-services that are special ed dependent and special ed specific, so that the staff has time to go through the caseloads. With our school psychology issues this year and just with some changes in policies in the state, there's reevaluations take a lot more time than they used to, and staff haven't had the time to do those during the year. So I'm going to give them some time before the year starts, hopefully, to make that happen. Educational assistants in our district get very little to no training. We drop them into jobs and expect them to just know how to do it. And so I would like to change that. I'd like to have us have a more formal educational training program for educational assistants. I think it would keep more of them around. I think it would also probably motivate some to go back and get their degrees and possibly become teachers themselves. And then finally, working with the teaching and learning team, response to intervention is how we provide services, how we provide the interventions before students get to special education. As I mentioned, we have 16% of our district in special education. That is significantly higher than the state average and quite a bit higher than I think that we really need it to be in this district. If we can do a little bit stronger job of intervening, then we may not need all of those students to make it all the way into receiving special education. So that's me. Thanks for listening. And I think we're on to Mr. Nelson and Virtual Academy. Oh, and Mr. Whip.
Good evening. This is Nick Nelson, administrator for Virtual Academy. Can we go to the first screen, please? Just to give you a little bit of a context here before we start, Acellus curriculum is semester-based. So we're at the end of this month, we'll be halfway through the semester content for the courses that Acellus offers. Our schedule, we have two teachers, one K-5 teacher and one 6-8 teacher. They have schedules, and in that schedule, there are individual meeting times for students on their caseloads, as well as grade level meetings for ELA and math. Those happen twice a week. And there's also what's called live monitoring, where if a student is struggling with a concept, a lesson, a quiz, the teacher will get a notification and the teacher can reach out to the student and work and walk the student through that problem. They also have TAT daily, teacher assistance time, where students can check in with the teacher if they need some extra additional support in a content area. Real quickly, this first set of graphs shows where our students are at: 32 at Chenoweth Elementary virtual, 12 at Colonel Wright, 8 at Dry Hollow, and 37 at the middle school. And this breaks it down by grade level for middle school. 6th grade is 9, 7th grade is 13, 5th grade or 8th grade is 15. And then this set of pie graphs down here break it down as far as grade level by Virtual Academy Elementary School. Dry Hollow, you'll notice that we don't have any kindergartners nor second graders, but just first, third, fourth, and fifth. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. What we're using for metrics as far as measurement and academic performance are these 4 areas right here. The first one is lesson problem average score. This is after a presentation, a student will take a quiz or answer a set of questions. This graph represents what the scores are, and I've included trimester 3 to date, actually to December 17th, to give us kind of a running comparison. First trimester to second trimester, into it about 3 weeks. Over here, going down, unit exam score is the next metric that we use. At the end of each series of lessons, there is a unit exam, and the students are tested or examined on that content. And these are the scores, percentages, excuse me, for broken down by each elementary school and middle school. GPA, we look at GPA as well. And I can give you the exact numbers, but at the Chenoweth Elementary, the average GPA trimester 1 is 3.35, trimester 2 is 3.18. For Colonel Wright, 3.12, 2.90. Dry Hollow, 2.3 or 2.52 and 2.47. Middle school, 2.58, 2.48. So we track these to see if we are seeing any market decrease, which will then trigger some problem-solving interventions from the data. The average grade per class, per student for Chenoweth Elementary is, this is a percentage, 82.5 for try 1, try 2 is 83. Colonel Wright, 78.5. Try 2 is 75.2. Dry Hollow, 76.90. First try, 73.0. Second try. For middle school, 72.1, 68.10. Please go to the next slide. Not chronically absent. These are our dates, 80% kindergarten, 60, 71, 60, 62.5, and so forth. K8, the average is 61.8. Go ahead, go to the next slide. Okay, this is a challenge area, both math and ELA, as far as STAR testing is concerned. We spent basically the first trimester getting our kids encultured to SLS and getting them rolling with the course content. And so in looking at our STAR data, what I requested was the window was to close this Friday, but I've requested that the winter window stay open, so for our kids anyway, so that we can get some numbers in participation. That should help us over here on the November 21-22 side. As we get more kids participating, doing the STAR test, we'll get some valid data. So you're going to see the same percentage, or very similar to the same percentage for the ELA. Could you go to the next slide, please? What we're trying to do is incentivize students long distance. And the way that we're doing that right now is that we're offering a grade percent, a modest grade percent improvement. So students who test, do the STAR testing will get a modest bump in their grade performance. So that's our first step. The second step was to extend the STAR testing window for our kids, the Acellus kids, so that we have an opportunity to increase the number, which would give us more testing data that would be valid. Could you go to the next slide, please? So our Acellus action plan is implement schedule adjustment if enrollment numbers increase. Right now, what we've got are opportunities, individual opportunities for students to meet with their teachers, scheduled meetings with their teachers every week for middle school, and every other week or within 2 weeks for K-5. We also have 2 grade level meetings per week scheduled, ELA and math, both at the elementary and 6-8 level. We are continuing to try to enhance our communication with parents with multiple means. We use Remind, Google Classroom messaging, autocaller, emailing school email address, Acellus emailing, phone calls, and we also have an Avid phone messaging system now that works. And I personally reach out to parents, give them my phone number, encourage them to reach out to me if they have any concerns or questions, and building that relationship with the folks. As I mentioned, we're problem solving the incentivizing individual small group direct instruction, instruction participation if enrollment numbers hold. What we'll end up doing most likely is if our numbers grow by much more, especially at the K-5 level, we will probably have to collapse either the individual meeting times or the grade level meeting times in order to handle the increased numbers. Social emotional. Earlier this year, we have an agreement with each of the elementary principals and their counselors, child development specialists, and the middle school, that if parents or students are experiencing difficulties at home, they can reach out to the resident school and make communication with the principal, the counselor, and start mitigation at that point in time. I think probably just to summarize everything, I think our clientele at the Acellus level is a lot of the students and parents are one-parent families, and they are struggling to maintain what the family unit is for them. And so we're doing whatever we can in terms of making ourselves available, reaching out, providing opportunities for students and parents to get any kind of support they need for making it through this difficult time. I believe that's it for my. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Nick. That was great. Scott Whitbeck here. I'm Director of School Improvement. I'm glad to share some information about our Educational Services Department. Next slide. So there's 3 prongs that I'll be talking about this evening. First is our instructional materials adoption process. As most of you know, this is the 7-year cycle, time for us to do English language arts K through 12 materials adoption. And so that is just underway starting this month. That process will wrap up. The selection adoption process is scheduled to wrap up by June. In the meanwhile, starting tomorrow, matter of fact, we have our first meeting of the adoption team, and we have 27 representatives, including a number of administrators and lots of teachers from different job roles within the educational world. And 2 of our new instructional coaches are together on that too. We'll be meeting at least once monthly, with the main parts of the process are looking at, what are the top selected publishers' materials that the state office has identified as being tops in all the elements. They did a very, very rigorous review of all the materials that publishers shared with them. So our committee's task is to, among them, to review what the state has said. Here's like the semifinalists. We then pick the finalists. Our teachers on the committee will actually pilot the materials and as a replacement to our current materials for ELA. And then that'll be during the month of March. Then we'll review together again with our notes of pros and cons, strengths or gaps of each program. And that will put it together to make our recommendation to our superintendent, then to the board for purchase. And then during June and summer, we'll be preparing to distribute the materials and do some ongoing staff development for our teachers, so they get to know the materials and get answers to their questions and are successful implementing them. Okay, next one. Here, the second item I'm sharing is about our after-school academy. Some other folks have mentioned a little bit about this, and I'm glad to say that it's off to a very good start. This is our first week, and we had initially, the grant was to start in middle October, but it has taken this long to recruit applicants. So we've actually, of the 10 total positions we have in the district for after school, we have 3 applicants, and thankfully all 3 are fantastic. So that was enough to start at our first school at Chenoweth. And it's our goal is to have up to 30 kids from Chenoweth, and we'll have up to 80 kids total in the district, and grades 2 through 5 is specified by the 21st Century Grant. So we'll have 80 total kids in the program, and kids who are in summer school get first consideration. And it's the main criteria are students who, based on achievement data and input from teachers, that we feel will have the greatest benefit to make some gains in school success by having extended learning opportunities. And I think AJ had mentioned earlier, it's the activities they have are quite rich. As far as academically, they're having reading and writing activities, a lot of times in a game format. They also we're getting some STEM activities, some really exciting projects the kids will get to work on, including creating Lego engineering structures, the makers kits, so kids get more experience with hands-on. And a lot of kids who maybe book learning isn't their strongest mode, just really thrive when they get a chance to get their hands on materials and learn that way. So we're excited for them to get that opportunity. And each day they also provide a snack and also a full supper. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, our professional development with our instructional coaches and myself, we are, our overall drive is to design and deliver PD for our educators in our district. And what we are doing right now, because of the unusual just workload and stress burden on our educators, we've adapted to that. And so we're thinking, just look at bite-sized chunks. We're doing once a month opportunities for our schools within their PD time for about an hour. About a half hour of it is just delivering an activity where they get to practice one new strategy, just one at a time. And then the other half hour would be to discuss with their colleagues how they will try that new strategy in their classrooms within the next few days. And that's how we'll progress through the year. We're focusing on effective instructional practices, meaningful ways to engage the kids, and also tailoring the activities in class. So all students, basically the goal is to take them all from where they are and move them to grade level or higher. I know every teacher wants to do that, and they already have lots of good strategies in their tool belt. And we're hoping through this process, they will continue to enhance their tool belt, have all the more ways they can reach all kids. And it's how we address social emotional health. And this really is benefits staff and kids. The PD program is designed to build in both educators and students a sense of confidence in themselves as learners and facilitators of learners, and just feeling the inclusion and worth. And this COVID times, people can feel pretty disconnected from others. So one of the goals here is to feel people are together in this learning and enhancing their expertise together. Next one. So some challenges for each of the three main areas. With our adoption process, right now, and this might be taken care of, but ideally we'd have all the publishers who are the top rated ones. They would send us samples to look at and to really get our hands on all the things here before we actually select which maybe 2 per grade level we're going to pilot. But I think the publishers don't want to send that many freebies out. So we are still good. We've been receiving some. We've reached out to all the publishers on the top list and asked them to send samples, and several have done so. So we're also going to have an opportunity to go to do a site visit to get our hands on the actual materials from all the top publishers as a team. And then from there, it's going to give us a better idea of which materials do we want to select for our teachers to actually pilot with their kids. Part of it's a challenge for time, also just because teachers are stretched, and so are administrators. Lots of people wanting their time and effort. So we're trying to balance the need for really making this a robust and really purposeful process within the scope of people's energy time they have available. But I think by June we're going to have a really good product. Challenges that are after school academy is, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very shallow applicant pool, but I know principals are doing the best, and so are the current employees of the after school program, working to recruit more people to apply. One challenge of that is that our people, you think our best candidate pool would be the teachers and instructional assistants in our schools, but their contracts go till 3:30, and the after school program starts right after kids are done at 2:40. So there's a gap of an hour where no one would be even available to start to work with the kids. So that usually is handled with at least one person per site who's not a current district employee who can handle that. And we have some sharing space, which actually is working out fine, but we have a number of programs who want space. You principals know that your schools are very in big demand, people wanting your space for after school activities. So, but that's coming together well. We're just being very creative with directors of other programs and coaches to work on that. The third area, professional development. It's always a challenge that to find enough time and opportunity, especially with COVID distancing, for people to come together and really dig into new concepts they're learning and collaborate with colleagues to think of how they're going to use new strategies and materials they're learning with their kids. Also in areas that, since this like the curriculum realm is a new department for our district, there's lots of areas people are excited to get into, to start working and improving and looking at new materials, new ways to do things. But we have, all of us have a limited number of people who can do that. So we're looking at pacing, what's the most important we're doing this year, and then what for the future years, and making a long-term plan out of that. One challenge, which is actually very interesting to do, is differentiating the staff development for different staffs and content. For example, that a lot of times the PD strategies we have will be similar to all of our elementaries, but each level, like middle school and high school, there's differences, different developmental levels. Teachers specialize in some content. So we'll be working with our administrators in the secondary schools to see what would benefit specifically maybe certain folks on their staff to get started. I know we've already begun with our administrators in the middle school, and really tying into AVID strategies, since that's a big focus. I know our high school administrators have mentioned too, that's the key to build on that. So we're looking at designing our PD to match what the schools are already working on. And finally, on professional development, the challenge is just a ratio. It's so much, in fact, we have 2 instructional coaches who are really good. That's 2 more than we had a few months ago. So we're delighted. And maybe in time, if we're able to afford more, that'll be more people who can work directly with teachers and on strategies and working with the kids in classrooms. Okay, next. Finally, our plan is, it really has been encapsulated in the comments I've made so far for the ELA adoption, is to facilitate the process to make sure we have recommendations to our superintendent by June. Our action plan for After School Academy is to recruit, get people in, and get the programs rolling at our other 2 elementaries. And for professional development, continue to design and deliver the modules to staff teams with the input from principals, what aligns with their ongoing PD, and then deliver them throughout the next school year, especially giving opportunities for staff to learn and grow in the use of the new instructional materials in ELA. And that is it for me.
Completes our presentation tonight. Chair Aparicio. I know that was a lot of information to digest.
That was all great, but yeah, a lot of information to take in. Any board members have comments, questions? Director Rasmussen?
Thank you. I just want to say this was fantastic. This report was so well organized, and I think everybody here is so in depth that I can understand that sometimes you're talking about things, but for some, at least from my perspective, I may not be able to understand it. I don't know, understand the jargon of the process. This time it's just so streamlined and so clear and consistent. And it just, everything that you said hit the mark for me tonight. And I understood it and I could follow it. So I really appreciate it. This is just fantastic. So great job to everyone. I know this was not an easy thing to do on top of everything else you were doing. So thank you.
Anyone else? Director Nelson?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. On the, in the past, we've always had difficulty with our math curriculum. And so we are still having those difficulties. You could see it in the numbers. And I was interested in Kurt's presentation because that's where all of the mistakes, or whatever you want to call that, all of the things that the students aren't learning come together in the 9th grade. And so he had this approach to put a lot of emphasis there. And so I guess I'm asking you, Kurt, in your experience with that, in the future, when we go to adopt a math program, do you have any clue as to how to teach math so it's more effective for our district? And where are the stumbling blocks for those students? Where does most of their trouble come from?
Well, I have my theories, I guess, but I've taught at the high school level and been at the high school level for a long time. And so what I see, coming in, the bottom line is there's a lot of different approaches to teaching math, K8. And what has to happen ultimately at 9th grade is they have to be prepared for algebra, period. And so if you prepare them for something that's not algebra, okay, then it can, and I know they are. I mean, they're teaching skills below that prepare them for algebra, but I don't know what we started this process of curriculum alignment K8 right in the 2019-20 school year, and then COVID hit and we just stopped, and that was an important thing that we were doing, I felt like, and teachers K8 were involved, K12 were involved in that. I had 2 teachers here, administrators were involved, and we were just beginning that work. And I felt like that was a good first step to start to try to solve some of the problems, because I was say this, it's like, look, either I'm teaching the wrong thing at the high school level, or you're preparing them wrong. I mean, something's wrong here. I shouldn't have, 30% of my ninth graders failing math. And that's what was just happening. And I mean, having what we're doing now is working good at our level, that just in isolation at the high school level. I mean, it really is. And I've just got 2 teachers focused on this, and we've, scaled it down. And so anyway, I feel like this is working at my level, but it's nationwide. It's not just an isolated issue here. It's nationwide. I talk to the principals, and they have issues that kids are not, algebra is a difficult thing. So anyway, there's still a lot of work to do. I feel like, I'm not a curriculum director or designer or anything like that. All I know is what I'm seeing here, and we got to continue to do work K-12 on math.
Okay, so maybe a word to Scott that he should maybe prepare himself to think about that question in terms of in the future adopting our next math curriculum. And I do know that I could see from families that I know that had kids in those years of 20 and in 19, that algebra at elementary level, all those concepts were being introduced and the kids were working with those. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I've never heard of that before. So, I mean, I do know that we put an effort there. So.
Yeah, the irony is you get a bunch of math teachers in the room and you get a whole lot of different approaches to teaching math. You would think it would be nice in black and white, but it's very not. It's very much not. There's a lot of different ways and different approaches to teach it. Some focus more on number theory, some focus on conceptual understanding or procedural understanding. I mean, there's different ways to approach it and teach it, and so it's just getting into it and just trying to get kids ready for that next level, and that's kind of how it has to be looked at. And what I know from my end is if a ninth grader only earns 5 credits, they only have about a 20% chance of graduating on time, okay, in ninth grade. And so if you start looking at what are they failing, and that failure point is math. And it's not, they don't fail art, if they fail English, it's catastrophic, but they don't fail English nearly at the rate that they fail math. Right. So, it is. If you just drill down and to intervene, that in my, and of course I'm a math guy, so I always get irritated when people say I'm not great at math, because that's not acceptable to say I'm not very literate, so I can't do that. Sorry. That's just not acceptable. So, any one of you could say I'm not very great at math and you'd still be, okay to probably keep your jobs. But if we said, I'm not very literate, I mean, I guess Judy couldn't say that as a physician, but anyway, it's just the nature of it. So it's important to me, and it has been, and I've tried for a lot of years to try to help correct it, but I feel like what we're doing now, at least at this level, is helping or working for now anyway.
And can I just add on that, Kurt, I appreciate you bringing that up as a perfect segue, and also Director Nelson. What Kurt had mentioned, the idea of, I totally agree. I think all of us educators would feel the same. We're getting people away from the idea of saying, I tell other teachers, don't ever say to your kids, oh, math is too hard for me too. No. Or I don't get, I would say, if the kid says, I don't know how to do fractions, we would say, yet. You might know it right now, but you will. We're good teachers and your brain works just fine. You will know it because we'll make sure you do. So there's never a time where they say, I never can get it. Anything in school, they all can get it. So part of what we're doing is looking at next year, after this year of ELA adoption, next year is the math cycle. So it's good news that's coming right on time. And we're looking at some of the strategies we're looking at for teachers. We know our teachers are doing the best they can with what they have before them at this time. So our job is to make sure we give them more strategies to add on to what they already have, so they'll get start seeing big bumps in students' interest and the ahas. One of them is just really working on small groups, and that would be in literacy and math. So we know if you teach one lesson right to the middle, high, or low, that group of kids will be fine, but the other kids won't. So part of it is looking at who your groups are, where are they for a certain skill, not all year, but for this skill, these 3 kids need some extra boost on this for like a week, and then they'll be fine. So it's really the targeting skills and looking at what is it, narrow the scope. So we're not trying to cover every concept of the world. Each grade should have a little narrower scope. So I can really focus on that. And the next grade level will know their kids come in more ready and more proficient in those skills. So those are some of the over umbrella things we're going to work on those in math.
The other thing I want to say to you, Scott, is I'm really excited about the after school academy. I used to be an administrator in Eugene for after school latchkeeper.
Oh yeah.
So I know the importance of that, and your strategy I think is perfect because it's all about keeping the kids excited about doing stuff and having fun and learning at the same time. And you've got at least 2 hours there in that afternoon, and so that they're doing something totally different than school as far as they're concerned, but they're learning just the same. So
yeah, they seem that we ask them each time they leave, how would you think? How was it today? Even the kids are kind of quiet and just don't say much. They go, I loved it. I go, okay, I can't tell by your face that you loved it. With the mask on, besides you can't tell. Okay, I believe you. You said you loved it. Something you want different? No, just keep doing that. So far, I guess customer satisfaction is pretty close to 100.
Yeah, that's good. Great. 80 kids, that's good.
All right, Director Richardson.
Thank you. And thank you to all the principals for your data. I really appreciated that. I always learn something at the PLT. My question is for Kurt. Kurt, do you notice a gender discrepancy in that math achievement? Because we don't see that, I don't think, by graduation. I mean, there's a stereotype, right? But do you see that?
I could look. If you want to give me a few minutes, I could look right now, to be honest. And the graduation, we do see a gender discrepancy in graduation. And it wasn't as bad in 2020, but in 2019, that was a really bad year. There was an 11-point difference in the, let me pull this up real quick. Yeah, there was an 11-point difference between male and female graduation. The female graduation rate, so the overall rate in 2019 was 81%. Female rate was 87.6 and male rate was 76.
So that's the opposite we would think, right? From math, you think that guys are going to be higher achievers in algebra and math. So,
well, generally academically, the male students underperform. Just they do, and so that's the graduation rate, Dr. Richardson. That wasn't the. I could dig into it. I actually have it pulled up. I could look and see what the gender discrepancy in the failure rate. But as school wide, we see more. I mean, you're more, just by being a boy, you're just more at risk. Unfortunately, that's what the data tells us. So
thank you for that. I know you're always thinking about the equity, and we are too. So.
Well, it's not just that. It's if you're trying to improve an overall number, you look at the group that's underperforming. I mean, it's not rocket science. You just try to find the group that's underperforming and help that group, and then magically the whole number goes up. So, but it was better in 2020. It was 90 to 95% was the difference. And we have, for some weird reason, we have a it's not 50-50 in this school. It's 53% of our students are male and 46.7 are female students, and then we just have anyway. So we for whatever reason have that. So when you take that factor into it, it's even more lopsided. So, but I haven't looked at the failure rate in math though. But I could though.
All right, Director Rasmussen.
Hi, I'd like to echo Dr. Nelson's concerns about math. I know we're having that discussion right now. I have absolute faith in our teaching staff. I also have faith in the amount of resources we're putting towards the students and paying attention to the students. But it seems as though it just seems like the red herring here is perhaps the instructional materials, and it seems like maybe perhaps a good approach. And I don't know the process, but when we get to that math cycle, it might be worth looking at school districts that have exceptional high rates of math performance to see what kind of instructional materials they're using in the math curriculum, just so that maybe that might be a good outlier to show us the way that maybe perhaps our current curriculum is not fulfilling the needs that we need to serve our students. And that's kind of teeing everything up for the 9th grade issues that Kurt's experiencing. So I think we definitely, it just seems like all arrows are pointing towards the curriculum. And I've heard that from parents before too. So just thank you for listening.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Whitbeck?
Yes, thank you. And Director Rasmussen responding to that, we do know, and you had a good point, we know it's the whole package of effective learning for kids is it's really a combination. The two biggies are the materials valuable, and do they address the standards we're teaching to, and do the teachers have a good repertoire of strategies to reach all the kids with their own different learning styles. So we know that, so one thing we want to do through adoption process is, find the package deal that's the best, but also look at supplementals, because a lot of times teachers have to find their own supplementals because that's just the way it works usually. But now we want to have a much more a process where it's not left up to everybody to figure out their own way, to do some looking at where are the, like you said, where are districts with maybe our same demographic, same conditions, and who's doing the best, and then ask them, what are you doing? One thing we've already pursued is with Ontario school districts, some very similar on a chart, the demographics would look similar. And I think Sandy was one of the first ones who brought this up. I think she's maybe a coach or a teacher on special assignment there who's specifically for math. And the middle school there has extremely high rates of kids passing the state test. But they've been talking to us about what they do is just, again, looking at the standards so that teachers know don't bother teaching to this over here because it does not even need it to this grade. Here's what you want to do developmentally and what layers on to previous years. These are the standards you teach to, and use these materials. So what to do and what not to do. So it's what materials to use. Like the book isn't really the curriculum, right? The curriculum is the standards you reach and then the pathways of which grade layers onto which grade. Instructional materials help one of the things you used to teach the curriculum. So curriculum is what we want them to learn, and materials would get there. So it'll be a long time process to work through this, but you can bet the math piece is going to be very important. We're going to have a lot of focus on that.
All right, Mr. Rundell, I think you were next.
I was just going to add that in my experience in this building this year and last year in Dry Hollow, that we definitely at the elementary level have some math teachers that are very passionate about teaching math. And I know I came from the secondary level, and like I kind of always heard that, like, oh, elementary teachers sometimes they don't like math. But I would say in this district we're very fortunate to have teachers that really like teaching math and spend lots of outside class time, like in their spare time, researching methods about teaching math. And so I do agree with Director Rasmussen that there is some frustration with the curriculum. And so I think looking at adopting something new and kind of really going deep in a few concepts to get those students like those really foundational skills will be a really important next step.
Dr. Bernal?
Yeah, I just wanted to add and emphasize, or at least just state for the record that curriculum is really important. And I know we are looking forward to the adoption of a new English language arts curriculum and subsequently after that, a math curriculum. However, I just want to remind everyone that curriculum is not the magic bullet and is not going to solve all of our problems. Perhaps even more important actually is the classroom teacher and their delivery of the actual curriculum. And more important actually is effective teaching practices and strategies in the classroom. And I could give you an example. I think something that's really important. So for example, if I'm teaching math and Teresa's teaching math and we're both using the same curriculum and Teresa has her kids and I have my kids and we each teach the same lesson, and then Teresa and I sit down to look at our data and Teresa's kids have completely excelled and might have completely flopped. And we just taught the same lesson using the same exact curriculum. the more important thing is that teacher Teresa and I sit down and are vulnerable with one another, and we reflect. And I say to Teresa, what did you do? How did you teach that lesson? How is it that your kids completely excelled? We taught the same exact lesson, and I'm vulnerable with Teresa and ask Teresa for help and say, Teresa, tell me what you did. I need to reflect and change my teaching practice and change some things about how I delivered my instruction, and go back and reteach that lesson to my kids, maybe using some of the strategies that Teresa did, so my kids too can excel. So I think providing more of those opportunities for our teachers themselves to reflect with one another on their teaching practices, giving them opportunities to observe one another. When we know teachers are being effective at delivering instruction, recognizing that, and giving opportunities for our teachers to observe one another, especially when they're being effective in the classroom, is going to take us a long way. But I just want to remind everyone, curriculum is not going to solve all our problems. It's going to help, but it won't solve all our problems. So it's a step in the right direction, but more important is going to be continuing to provide professional development in the areas of effective teaching practices and strategies, and strengthening our teachers and continuing to support them in the classroom in those areas. So just wanted to add that.
And I'll just follow up, Dr. Richardson, there's the discrepancy in failure rate, just looking at the failure rate, it's 65-35 male to female. So that's the failure rate. Yeah. At least that's just 9th grade, because that's just what I had up.
Thank you.
One comment I'd like to put forth is that learning is always the constant, time is the variable. Kids mature at different rates. Their brains mature at different rates. Their thinking process matures at different rates. So we need to keep in mind, I think, we've tried integrated math. We've tried multiple different things previously, standard math. But the bottom line is learning is the constant. It should be, in my opinion, it should be spiraled through the curriculum from grade level to grade level. And then time is the variable, manipulating that time. And Kurt has done that, I think, with the ABC, trimester 1, trimester 2, trimester 3 approach. We've done it in the past with Algebra 1A, and then those kids that were in jeopardy, we gave them a tutoring class as well to try to extend the amount of time that they had to work with the content. So that's my input.
All right, Dr. Rasmussen.
And I beg forgiveness for being possibly ignorant here, but I'm not sure, going to Dr. Bernal's point about how teachers of the same discipline can be vulnerable with each other. To what extent are we fostering like team building and trust building between instructors in the same discipline, so you can have that breakdown of barriers and there's more mentoring? I don't know. I'm sure that exists somehow, but I don't know if we have a formal program supporting that, because I could see how everyone could definitely benefit, especially if we're moving into new curriculum and everybody's trying to gain familiarity with it and find out what, everybody's trying to do their own way and provide their own teaching style while reaching each learner. But at the same time, there might be some success stories that we could share internally through team building, and that can help break down any trust barriers, that kind of thing.
Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about like professional learning communities?
Yeah, I'm happy to share some of that. And it's actually, I think comments or people are making it just perfect segues. And adding to what Dr. Bernal said and Director Rasmussen, it is a big issue about having to feel like you're safe enough to admit you don't know everything before you're willing to try something new. So part of it will just be, and that's actually ironically why we had delayed pushing forward with PLC's professional learning communities, because we thought that everybody would be pushing so hard with the new initiative. We thought this would be good if you hurry up and do it. And that alone causes more stress and more resistance because it's just too much. So it kind of worked backwards. So we've held off, but we've just introduced a little bit of that. But part of the PLC process to really focus on collective looking at student work. That's a big part of it. Like here's, teachers like third grade team comes together on their PLC meeting and we all look at, had our students do a certain writing sample. And we're going to come together and look how do they do and start talking about who did well, why, and then what can we all try? So if it's part of it is establishing kind of your norms for collaboration of we're just looking at the whole purpose is positive intent and looking at what we collectively can do to improve ourselves, but also help others, move ahead. So it's a long time process, but I think once we focus on the student work, already schools are doing great about looking at the data after major assessments with the 20% club, 100%. I was able to sit on some virtual meetings last spring. I was just really amazed how well those are set up at our schools. But I think this will be another angle once we get going with the PLCs that I've seen at other schools I've been director of in Seattle and Los Angeles. It was just really those who had good systems of PLCs made huge gains because, like you said, you get to see what one of your colleagues is trying and what worked. And you can try saying, I tried this and it bombed, and you're not in trouble. You just have to say, you can admit that something you tried, you at least ventured out, you tried, it didn't work, that's okay, try this next. It's part of the whole continuous improvement cycle.
Director Nelson?
This one is for Carol Dawson at Colonel Wright. So what happens in a friendship group? I'm curious.
No, that's fine. Our counselor does a number of things. One of them would be taking kids from the same grade level, and you might have a student who has difficulty making friends and having friendship skills, and you associate them with somebody who maybe doesn't have those same difficulties along with others in the class. And you put them together and you play games, build things, and through the social interaction, you develop the friendship.
Okay, that's a cool concept. I really like that, putting kids together and teachers together to create friendships. I like that. I might have one other question here on. This would be for special ed. I didn't catch what kind of students are served on the Crossroads program.
Crossroads is a behavioral program.
Is a what?
Behavioral
program.
So students with extreme behavior that is not able to be managed in a regular ed classroom. They go to a smaller environment, less students, and with more significant. And there's also, once Trillium is on board, it'll be an actual mental health placement. So there'll be intensive mental health treatment happening as well.
So the students come from all different places in our system, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Currently just K-5.
Right, elementary. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Do you have something, Director Jones, or?
No, I just want to reiterate and thank everyone for all the hard work. I know you got a lot of other stuff going on. This probably took quite a bit of time to do itself, and really appreciate it. And like was mentioned earlier, understood a lot more this time and makes a lot more sense, and I really appreciate it.
Comment. If no one else, I just had a couple of things myself. One, Mr. Whitbeck, excited to see the after-school program at Chenoweth and hoping to see that expand over to Dry Hollow and Colonel Wright. And Ms. Hampton, excited to kind of get your lens and look at our percentage and, why is it the percentage it is, and, what can we do to serve those students better, and maybe even lower that percentage. So thank you for your work on that. And in general, this format, I think, worked better. I appreciated everyone's kind of focused approach to the action plan. I think in the prior ones that I've been involved, we try to kind of make global goals or actionable items beyond that. And I think the more specific approach per building, I think resonated with me a lot more today. And I can really tell that each of you took the time to really kind of think about that, what it meant for your own building. So again, thank you for all the work you kind of put into that, and looking to see kind of what progress we can make from here to the end of the year with the kiddos in our district. So can't thank you guys enough for all your efforts. And if no one has anything else, I think we will look to adjourn. Any final words, Dr. Bernal?
No, I would just like to thank my team for all their efforts in putting this together for all of you tonight. And I know we're all tired. It's been an eventful day for some. It's been an eventful day for all of us. We're all working hard, and we just appreciate your time and listening. As I said, I know it was a lot of data to download, but we appreciate, as always, you taking the time with us, and we appreciate your questions. And if you have further questions that you think of, don't hesitate to send them my way, and we'll work on getting them answered for you.